Welcome to the 7 p.m. Racine area archive speaker meeting. Let's start this meeting off with a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer. Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We ask that you take a brief moment to make sure your cell phone's silenced out of respect for your fellows and our speaker tonight. We'll pass the basket in honor of the seventh tradition, which states every AA group ought to be self-supporting, declining outside contributions. $15 will go towards rent of this meeting space. The rest will go to District 17 Archives. All right, I'm Justin, I'm an alcoholic. AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Welcome again to the Racine area archive speaker meeting. Consistent with Alcoholics Anonymous General Service Archives mission, our purpose is to document permanently the work of Alcoholics Anonymous, to make the history of the organization accessible to AA members and other researchers, and to provide a context for understanding AA's progression, principles, and traditions. We will meet here at the Grove Club on the last Sunday of every month. The first half of the meeting will be a question and answer period, followed by a break. After said break, our speaker will resume with sharing their experience, strength, and hope pertaining to a page from the Big Book. This meeting will be recorded and stored at the Racine Area Central Office. A digital copy will be sent to the Area 75 Archives. You may contact your District 17 Archive Chair, that being Sam in the front row here, to arrange access to the recordings. Not to single anybody out, just to welcome you. Is there anybody here with less than 30 days sobriety? Nice. Welcome, y'all. Anybody here with more than 15 years sobriety? All right. Okay, the speakers selected for this meeting are old-timers. An AA old-timer is any member who has been continuously sober for a significant period of time. The definition of significant is open to interpretation and varies widely. For the purpose of this meeting, an old-timer is considered anyone with 20 years or more of sobriety. The old-timers interview serve as a representation to the significant impact that long-term sobriety can have on our AA community. All right, let's hear it for our speaker, Dave L.
Thank you. Thank you. Is this thing working?
Probably is.
Okay. Okay, I usually don't need a mic anyhow because I got a big mouth. But, okay.
All right. Well, Dave, question one, what is your sobriety date?
February 27th, 1975. For those who don't know math, that's 49 years, and I didn't think I'd have 49 minutes when I walked in here for the first time. So.
Who Who was the President of the United States when you joined AA?
Gerald Ford. I said that to myself when I looked at the question before, and then I Googled it to make sure I wasn't going to be wrong. I knew it wasn't Nixon anymore, and I was trying to think, was Ford in there at the time? Yes, he was. Yeah. And
Very cool. When and where was your first contact with AA?
right here. Before I got here, we spent the entire morning. We had rotary phones. We didn't have these wonderful contraptions of cell. So I was shaking so bad I couldn't have got my finger in the hole to dial a number. You know, because I used to hear, you know, you can never make it in AA if your wife makes the phone call. If my wife didn't make the phone call, I wouldn't have never got here because I couldn't have dialed the number. And the thing is, she called around. She called Gene Tarwood, who is a recovering alcoholic and a counselor at the A Center, and he told me I needed to come down and see him, and I told him to go to hell, and I hung up the phone. Then she had me talk to somebody else, and I couldn't remember who that one was, but I told him the same thing. And then she called here, and a little guy named Ed answered the phone, and I told him what he could do also. And my wife, being as persistent as she was, she did have Al-Anon under her belt. Told me, you need to do something or you're going to be outside looking in. And so I said, okay, I'll go. And I drove over here to the Grove Club. I was in my car, she was in her mother's car. I was wondering, because I always said there was two cars, and I couldn't remember for the longest time. I knew we didn't have two cars. My car was a piece of crap to begin with. But anyhow, I was coming over here, and if I suddenly stopped, I would have probably got rear-ended, because she was not going to let me stop. And I came here, and the entrance to the place was, these doors are open. They didn't lock gloves up back then. And the door was open. I came in the door, and some guy heard me coming in. He says, "Who is it?" I says, "Dave." He's all good. He's Ahmed. I've been waiting for you. I thought, I told this guy to go to hell. How's he waiting for me? And I went downstairs, and there was like a half a dozen guys there. It was a 10:30 meeting on Thursday morning. I remember that distinctly. And these guys, not once did they point a finger at me and say what kind of a loser I was. My name was in the newspaper at the time. I got in some legal troubles. It was a federal crime, you know, but I was a mailman and I stole mail. I'm not proud of it, but at the other end of it is, the federal marshals arrested me. And somehow I was let out of my own recognizance, and I went into hiding because my lawyer called the family and said, well, there's a story that goes to the lawyer too, because I went to my doctor and I told him I was an alcoholic, I think. And he smiled. He says, well, it's about damn time you say you're an alcoholic. Because he told me I was a borderline. And I ran with that for almost 5 years, 4.5, 5 years, thinking I was a borderline alcoholic. And he told me, he says, well, I'm glad to see you finally decided what side of the line you're on, you know. And I said, well, why didn't you say something? He says, because if I did, you would have never come back to see me for anything. But he was the man who was instrumental in getting me my attorney, who instantly put me in hiding so the marshals couldn't serve an arrest warrant on me to take me into custody. Because I did, if they would have taken me into custody, they would have taken me to, I think it was to Waukesha. And, but anyhow, I went hiding on that for a couple of days until finally I just said, this is crazy. If they want me, they can come and get me. And I went home. And when I got home, I found out that my lawyer got that lifted, so I wasn't going to get picked up. But in the meantime, I'm having the DTs, and I'm shaking like a leaf and everything else. And time went, I don't even know how many days passed, but anyhow, I stopped drinking immediately way back then. And, you know, I wanted to get some help, but I didn't want to get the help. So that's why I got in that argument with my wife. And I got down here and I met these guys, and they were being friendly and treating me wonderfully. One man in that group, a guy named Tim, he took me under his wing and took me from here to the Alano Club, back to here. You know, there was only like 11 meetings in Racine at the time, when you think about it, 1975, and what we have today. And people say today, I can't get to a meeting. That is BS. You know, it's just, you know, my philosophy is this town's only 4.5 miles wide. If I wanted to get drunk, 4.5 miles was not going to keep me sober. You know, I'd go for it. I'd go out and get it. I don't give a damn what part of town it was in. And I'm originally from Philadelphia, so 4.5 miles was maybe my neighborhood. You know, and didn't stop me there neither. But the thing is, he took me under his wing, and the thing that really helped me through early in my recovery was, as I was struggling and putting my life together and getting involved in this program, he died. Tim died. He went to Minnesota, and he got drunk and died there. Yeah. So I attributed him to being a big, strong thing to help me with my recovery. And he also came off as an example of what happens if you don't put it together. So it was real. You know, when people say you could die if you don't stop drinking, God put a man in my life who died immediately, and shortly after I got in the program. So that's how I got here. That was my first meeting, my first contact. And just one other thing. 3 months after I got sober, I found out the Ed that I said hello to coming in here was a different Ed. The first Ed I told to go to hell happened to be a Progressive dairy delivery man who ironically was my father-in-law's sponsor. And I didn't know that at the time neither, but yeah, and my father-in-law had already passed. So my family there's some history in my family as far as alcoholism is concerned. It just didn't begin with me, that's for damn sure. But that gives you an answer.
That was an incredible answer. Can you describe what Alcoholics Anonymous was like back then compared to today?
Like I said, there wasn't that many groups, but the people we had, we were stuck together pretty good. Although there was still some coldness in the groups, at least I felt that way. Yeah, you know, it may not have been it may be more friendlier than I thought it was. Because I came in, the first thing I did was, I asked my sponsor, who I had from here, and I said, I don't like this place. He goes, why? I said, you come in, you had sofas downstairs. When you come in, you sit down these damn sofas, you can suck your thumb, and nobody will come over and say hello to you. He says, oh, so what do you do? I said, I'm mad. He says, why don't you get off your dead ass and go over to somebody and put your hand out and say, hi, my name is Dave and I'm an alcoholic. And if you do that, they got to do one of two things. Show their ignorance and walk away from you, or take your hand in friendship and you might develop a friend. And I found out that they didn't show their ignorance. They took my hand in friendship, and I ended up developing a hell of a lot of friendships in AA, not only here, but in other places I go. So when I go into a place, and if I don't know anybody, I will walk up to somebody and introduce myself, because I think it's important that I make contact. I don't want to go to a meeting and just walk out of there and somebody say, how was the meeting? I don't know. I don't like these people. They don't talk to me. You know, I don't want that. You know, but I'm going to make sure I talk to them. And if I talk to them, they always respond. So I found out right off the get-go, by coming to the meetings, I was no longer alone.
Very cool. So other than telling people to go to hell, what were you...
I cleaned it up.
Oh, yeah.
I have a foul mouth. Like nobody knows.
What were you like as a newcomer, and how do you think others would describe you when you were a newcomer?
Oh, God. I was a know-it-all. They talked about the big book. And like I said, my father-in-law was in AA and everything. So when I went to my in-law's house, he had the big book in one spot, 12 and 12 someplace else. Father John Doe's book stacked in another place. Father John Doe, for a lot of people may not know, he was the first Catholic priest in AA. And he wrote a series of books. And they were called the Golden Books. And they had the 24-hour day book in the bathroom. Yeah. I mean, no matter where I sat, there was literature. Yeah. And man, I hated this place. You know, I hated the idea. But I got to AA, it was a whole different world. I felt comfortable. I felt comfortable once I got here. Once I got past that door of telling people to go to hell, I found out that it was a good place for me to be.
Awesome. Who was your first sponsor? How did you end up working with that?
Mr. Sweetness. No. Anyway, Conrad J. He was the most arrogant person I met in AA. And I picked him because I felt I was the second most arrogant person. I thought, there's nobody who's going to help me except somebody's going to really put a foot up my ass when I need it. And he was right there for me, and he was strict with me. He told me these are the things I needed to do, and everything else. And getting back to the previous question, he asked me about the big book and everything. I complained about that being written back in the bow and arrow days. You know, I didn't like it, and I went to an open meeting here in this room, and they used to give out door prizes, the big books, 12 and 12, and the 24-hour day and everything, and I won them. Well, the next week, I swear to God, they rigged the drawing because they draw your name out or whatever, and I think they lied. But anyhow, I got the big book, and I went home and I started to read it, and the next week I came back to the same group and apologized, and they just smiled and said, "Well, you read it, huh?" Yeah. Nobody said you dumbass or anything like that, but it was good. But now getting on to the other question, I just went blank again. The last one.
How did you end up with your sponsor?
Oh, yeah. That's when I ended up with him here. He was a member of the Grove Club. He was active as hell, but you know, he was the type of guy in his gentleness. If he got hot-tempered, he was very hot-tempered. If he got mad at somebody in a group, he'd take his fist and just bang it on the table. We'd be meeting in those rooms downstairs, and the coffee on the table would come up a couple of feet and come back down. Some people would be scared to death and whatever, and that was Conrad just being himself. But I picked him because I knew he cared. In spite of all those behaviors, he cared about the other man. And he spoon-fed me what I needed to get. He told me I needed to read these books. I needed to do this. I needed to do that. You know, he told me I had to do a 4-step, and I jumped right to it. I got it done in a year and a half. Yeah, because I didn't trust anyone. You know, I felt that if I put it down on paper, everything that I did and everything else, and because I hadn't gone to court yet and whatever, and I was thinking, well, you guys could be plants. So when I go to federal courthouse, and they'd be sitting there and they'd all put their hands up in the air and say, Judge, we could tell you something about them, you know. But none of that ever happened. But I was really grateful for that. And but he kept me hungry to stay sober. And we went to a lot of meetings together. And it was not only here, it was, you know, go anywhere. You know. There'd be nothing to be sitting in a meeting here and you say, okay, tomorrow night we're going to go to another meeting. I'll pick you up. We go to Antioch, or we go to Waukegan. We went down to Zion Benton. That's a story in itself. You know. I went to Zion Benton one time by era with a friend that was in AA. And we were going to Kenosha to a meeting, and it was Labor Day weekend. And it was down at St. Mary's Church on 80th Street. And I have no rhyme or reason. I never found out why. But we got down there was a sign on the door that the meeting was canceled that night because of the Labor Day weekend. And that to me is, you know, Labor Day weekend, you better have a meeting, you know, because that's the last big drunk. So he says, I know of a place down in Winthrop Harbor. I said, okay, we'll drive down there. So I had my car and we drove down there, and he says, turn here. I said, turn where? He says, here, right, this driveway. I said, it's Packy's liquor store. He goes, yeah. He says, the club's here. I said, I used to buy my liquor at Packy's liquor store. I never seen that damn club, you know. It was attached to the building. And then I found out after I started going to Packy's, not going to Packy's liquor store, but going to the Zion Benton group, Packy was the guy who started the damn group. And, you know, I used to go down there and buy case lots. I mean, not cases of beer either, cases of bourbon, gin, and vodka in case somebody came to my house. But I didn't invite no one over, so. So I always had a great supply. I always had a great supply. And yeah, so that was a rude awakening for me early in my recovery.
Can you think of any AA catchphrases from back then that you don't hear anymore?
No, I think pretty much they're, you know, so much the same. First things first, you know, kiss. You don't hear that one too much. You know, I think I kind of soured people off. You know, keep it simple, stupid, which indicated we were dumb. Yeah, but then people tried to clean it up by saying, keep it simple, sweetie. You know, and that didn't go over too well with the male ego. Yeah, so I think it did. I think it probably did take the back seat to a lot of things. But generally speaking, a lot of the sayings we have, you still hear them, but
Sure.
maybe not as frequently.
Sure. Did you get involved in service early on?
Yes,
And
I did.
What did you do? What did you get involved in?
I started to chair meetings after I got sober a while. I became a board member here. You know, I was secretary of this club for a little over a year, whatever, and I quit because I got mad again. Yeah, but one of the women that was in the meeting was carrying on like this was the Meadowbrook Country Club. You know, she was upset because certain people who were coming, they were drunk. Well, I said, this is a drunk club. But I got mad at that and I said, oh, the hell with it, I don't need this. So I pulled away from the Grove at that time. But I stayed away for a while, but I didn't stay away from AA. I just went other places. I went to the Alano. I always went to the Alano while I was even here. But I started going to Oak Creek. There was a meeting up in Oak Creek that got started. And incidentally, that was started by 3 guys from Racine who got mad at Racine and started the meeting in Oak Creek. So I was talking this, you know, before the meeting that the growth in AA that I've seen continues, and it continues really flourishing well when people get upset with one program or another. You know, they start another one and they start another group. You know, when I first started, you had the covenant, They had meetings over there. They weren't not the same as they got today, as it was a different meeting. But then they also had one at the one down the street from there. I can't. It's not the Covenant. It's the other Resurrection. There was a meeting down there, and it was, you know, the Grove Club. Prior to me even coming in, it was first on High Street at the Emmanuel Lutheran Church. And that was started by guys that got pissed off at the Alano Club. And then they started to grow over there, and then they came here, and they bought this place. And Craig was one of the instrumental people in that. His father was the one that signed the papers, the Haas family. But there was a lot of people involved. It just didn't appear, you know. But none of us were better than the other, and nor are we today either. You know, no matter where I go, AA is AA, and it welcomes you. And that's the thing. That just makes noise. But I never answer it if it does, even if it was a phone.
Let's see if we should bounce around a bit here.
Sure.
How about this one? What do you remember most about the first time you sponsored someone?
I was terrified. I wanted to make sure I was perfect with it, that I had everything down pat and everything else, and I found out that it's not how it works. You carry a message, you don't dictate the message, you carry it to them and you hope that they grab a hold of it. What you want them to do is maybe mirror a little bit of what you have, and then have their eyes open enough that they start mirroring what they see around the different meetings and learn from everybody there.
Should we do one more question?
Because it's an important part of the program to me, is being able to do that and just send a message. I try not to judge a person. I met a guy last night who basically was saying he needed help, and I told him where the meeting was this morning in the hopes he'd come this morning at 7, but he didn't show. But that's not my responsibility. That would be his. My responsibility was to make sure he knew that there were some meetings, and I gave him a schedule of meetings for the whole city, you know. And I said, give yourself a chance. Don't let your friends win the battle, you know. You know, don't hide behind your disease. But 12-step work is fun. It's also scary.
Sure.
Yeah. My first 4 12 steps, I was telling you this right before the meeting, they died. One shot himself, and the other 3 hung themselves. And I called up Conrad. I said, I can't do this. He goes, why? I said, because I'm like the Grim Reaper. You call me, you die. He says, did you get drunk? I said, no. He said, so you didn't fail. He says, they failed themselves. You told them what they needed to do, and they were sicker than what you thought they were. And it was out of my control. So, you know, that's the important part to me, of being there for the next person. But I'm not a God. Yeah. I remember one guy in the meeting here turned around. Because I talked about me being a thief, and he said, "Well, I never stole nothing in my life." I said, "No, that's right. He said, I never stole nothing." I said, "Did you ever go to work drunk?" He goes, "Yeah, why?" I said, "You stole the check. There's no way in hell you showed up at work drunk and gave him an honest day's work." I said, "So stop polishing your halo." Yeah. because someday the halo's going to slip and you might choke to death on it if it gets around your neck. And it wasn't a couple of months later, he went back out and I never did see him again. And it upset me, but I don't take responsibility for his relapse neither. You know, that's him. And I don't know if he ever came back, you know. So if he did, he wasn't where I was in meetings at. So.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
We will take a 10-minute break. We'll resume at 7:41.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Okay.
All right, everyone. Let's welcome Dave back.
Okay. Oh, okay. I don't know if I need that one too. They got me hooked up there. They got me hooked up there every day. I feel like I'm on stereo. Well, that's the closest thing I'll ever get to a steroid. Yeah, it's the closest I'll ever get to a steroid. At my age, hell, that'd definitely kill me. I don't know. I was looking through the book. It's kind of interesting. I had all my big books out the other day, trying to say, okay, I need to get something in here, and I'm trying to remember where the hell I was at and everything else. So because I got all the books at home. I got first edition, second edition, third, fourth. You know, if they come out with a fifth, I'll probably run out and buy that one too. But at least I won't drink one, so that's a good idea. So the one thing that kept jumping out at me was the 4-step, because that was the one that scared the living heck out of me when I came into AA. You know, I was afraid to do it. I didn't, like I said in my question and answer thing, I didn't trust people. I thought the world was out to get me. And it took me a long time before I was able to sit down and put that on paper and share with other people what had to be done or what I had to do. And I had to stop judging. If I went to a meeting and I disagreed with you, I judged you. And I found out that didn't get me nowhere by judging people. All I did was just screw things up more and make me more confused and more angry. And instead of getting angry at myself, I got angry at the groups. You know, I thought, well, they don't know what they're talking about, so I'm going to go to a different group. And I was wallowing in self-pity. And I was in the process of doing my 4-step and everything at the time, or at least writing it down, the whole thing. And so I figured, well, I was getting angry at Racine. I didn't want to go to meetings in Racine because I was wallowing in my self-pity, so I was crying like whatever, into a Grove Club, going to the Alano Club, crying there, going wherever I could and cry. So I figured, well, I'll be outsmart everybody. I got in the car and I drove down to Kenosha. So I went downstairs to the meeting there, and there was like 12 or 13 people in the meeting, and I got there a few minutes late. And they were having a meeting on self-pity. And fortunately, I was the last one in the group to be asked what I thought. And all I could do was look at them and say, thank you. Because they really read me the riot act and told me, not even knowing that that's what I was down there for. You would have thought the people from Racine were on the phone calling down to Kenosha saying, the imbecile is on his way down. He's down on 32nd, Highway 32, and he's passing such and whatever. He's getting closer to the Alano Club. I figured they're all lined up waiting for me, my little sick mind, you know. And only to get down there and find out that there was other people feeling self-pity also, you know. And they were able to work around it. So when I left that meeting, I felt, man, they helped me, and I owe a lot of people an apology. So guess what got added to the 4-step? Was my attitude, my judgments, you know, my single-minded nonsense that I was feeding myself, and I needed to unload that. So I started to write, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote. And the more I wrote, the more I found out about Dave, what kind of a mess he really was. And I found out that, like I said, when I was going to go to court for sentencing, I knew then I was with the right lawyer, everything was going right for me. My sponsor was there for support. He wasn't in the courtroom, he had his job and everything. But spiritually, he was with me because of what he had shared with me prior to that and everything. And the one thing I'll remember, I wanted to share this before too, when it was in the courtroom, and it was up at the federal courthouse, the old federal courthouse in Milwaukee. I don't know if anybody's ever been in there. They have like chairs on the floor, on the floors. They got balconies, and if you fall off the balcony, you can go down a few floors, you know. And we were in the courtroom, and while we were there, the judge said, Myron Gordon, that was the name of the federal judge. He's dead now, I believe. At least he should be after all these years. But he'd have to be 100 and some plus years, you know. But anyhow, but he turned around, he congratulated me. When he was talking to me and sentencing me, he had already, then he turned around and told me I was going to get probation. And he told me, he says, that he was really proud of me that I was going to AA and I was doing all these steps and I was following all the rules. And if I kept up the good work, someday you might be able to go back to social drinking. I looked at him and I went, oh my God. And we got out of that courtroom, and my lawyer, which was Dexter Black from Racine here, and Dexter turned around and looked at me. I thought he was going to throw me over the balcony. And he turned around and he said, I want you to forget that. He says, that was wrong. I said, no, I don't ever want to forget that. Because what he proved to me is how smart this man was and how learned he, you know, all the degrees he had. When it came to alcoholism, he didn't know nothing. But I knew I needed to stay in AA. And we didn't have no money. We were pea poor, believe me. We were really just poor. And I came out of that courtroom and we went to the Pfister for dessert because I couldn't afford to eat anything there. I went and got a piece of pie and a cup of coffee, and I don't even know if I could afford that too much at the time. But you know, the thing was, it was just breathing the fresh air in polluted Milwaukee. It smelled good. It felt good too, knowing that I was going to be able to come back home. I didn't believe what my attorney was telling me prior to going into the court and everything else. So, you know, all those things came to be. And, but the thing is, I had all these things down in my 4-step, written down. And the more I stayed sober, the more I wrote. But the one thing I didn't get through, what through to me, was the trust part. Because other people have been meetings with me in the past. No, I've shared this part of it. I went to do my 5th step in Indiana. Because I figured if the guy I knew in Indiana went out and got drunk, I didn't give a damn. Because I didn't know anybody else in Indiana and nobody knew me down there either. But you know, that was me continuing to hide. And today, I don't live like that. You know, I don't care who knows I'm an alcoholic or anything. I would sneak out of my house and go to an AA meeting. And my kids were small at the time. My 2 oldest ones were, you know, like 8 and 9, something like that when I got sober. And I'd be going out the door, getting in the driveway and trying to quietly leave the neighborhood. And my kids would holler, Daddy, where are you going? I'd whisper, I'm going to a meeting. AA, huh? You know? Well, everybody has children, knows that children's voices echo, you know, and, you know, it was a real rude awakening. So, you know, that helped me take a look at myself as to where I was, and I got past the shame end of it. But it pointed out to me that the 4-step was not the end of the program. It was just the first part of the workings, as far as I'm concerned. It identified my defects of character. It allowed me to take an honest look at myself, and then I was able to take another step in that direction to try to correct some of my defects. I don't think I've corrected all of them. Anybody says that they have no defects of character, they're dead. You know, because, you know, if we're living, I'm going to have some defects in my character. But I can't carry them around and just ignore them. When I recognize I got a defect, now, once I recognize that, I got a responsibility. That big book tells me I have a responsibility now to get rid of it, to do something about it. To walk around and brag about a defect is wrong. But to identify that defect and then take the steps that are necessary to make those kind of changes in your life, so you don't have to end up in court again, or, you know, whether it be a legal battle or a marital thing. My wife and I got along wonderful. I'm lying. Yeah, I got sober. I wasn't sober. I was dry. And we would, she was going to Al-Anon, and she knew Al-Anon, believe me. My mother-in-law was a member of Al-Anon. Her and 2 other women started it in Racine. And they started their meetings in 1952 at the Colonial Restaurant in the basement. And my wife went to her first Al-Anon meeting in 1952. She was 12 years old. Yeah, today's her birthday. If she was living today, she'd be 84. So, you know, it was a real tough day for me and the family. You know, memories, you know, not that we were crying or anything, it was just those good memories we have. And, but to think, the knowledge base that was in my family, and I kicked it to the curb for many, many years. And then coming here and being able to say, okay, this is what I need to do today. So when I was early in my recovery, we ended up in a marriage counselor because I was doing so well. You know, I was going to the AA meetings. I was making all the meetings you could make. I was making, you know, we only had like 11 meetings. I was making at least 9 of them a week. And I'd go home, you know, how'd it go? Oh, all right, you know, that nonsense, you know, really cold and everything. You know, you close the meeting with the Lord's Prayer, and I said, amen. I meant it. I left it all at the table and ended up in the marriage counselor's office. Now, you get a visual of this. I'm sitting here behind the desk looking at the counselor. My wife is sitting here looking at the back here. Or I'm looking at the back. She was the one looking at the counselor. I wasn't looking at the counselor. And the counselor kept telling us, you need to go out and have a cup of coffee with each other after these sessions. I didn't want to do that. It was the last thing I wanted to do was sit across the table and talk to this woman. So we go to the Around the Clock restaurant in Rapids. And after about 15 minutes of that, I say, okay, I've had enough of this crap, let's go. And one day we were in there, and she turned around and shared something. I don't even know what it was, but what it was, it set off a light bulb to me. And from there, it was growth. I started to hear her, I started to listen to her, and I started to believe what she had to say. And I stopped judging. And my life got a hell of a lot better. That wasn't the end of the counseling, because our last counseling session was our counselor. She got sick during one of our sessions while we were screaming at each other. And she went out and she came back in, got sick again. Third time she went out, I heard the rescue squad, or if I didn't hear the rescue squad, they came and got her. And the secretary came in and told us our session was over. And she went home. Our counselor went out with a gallbladder attack, which I probably attributed to. But yeah, the thing is, but years later, I ran into her at a couple other things, and she was amazed that I was still sober and alive. Yeah. But it was just really neat how this program encircles itself. The fourth step is an intricate part of our program, but it's not the only part of the program. When we get done with the fourth and we do a fifth, then we got we identified many other things, the shortcomings, the character defects and everything. Now we got some more work to do. And tonight I do a 10-step. I do that every night. And I've been doing it for a long time. Not for the whole 49 years, so I'm not going to tell you I'm Mr. Perfect, I have any shape of imagination. But, I do it more so now than ever. And at night I thank God for another day, because you people give me that. You gave me all that time to put my life together. And this is a grateful place to be. I don't have to apologize when I walk in the door. I mean, I'm alone now. I got 2 dogs so I have to apologize to. But, but my kids love me. There was a time where I wasn't sure they even liked me. And, I have a good relationship with my children. Each one of them is significantly different from the other. I don't try to put them all in one basket and say they're all the same. No. They're all 3 of my children, but each one has got a totally different personality and different beliefs. And I've learned to respect them for who they are, in the hopes that they respect me for who I am. And I haven't had that difficulty on that end for a long time. My kids respect me. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for this program. And I hope whatever I share tonight helps somebody, because you guys have been helping me for 49 freaking years. And I'm really grateful for that. And I just want to remember all the people we've lost in the last year through sobriety, who were sober and died because of other reasons. They were very special. I've learned from each and every one of them. I want to thank you guys. Thanks tonight.